stations, you're in fire station 1. We have fire station 2, on, so no. And Ashland Street, right across the cemetery. Prime location for everybody. So we have the fire chief here, Chief Razor. Brand new, he's deputy chief, now he's the full enchilada.
Yeah.
So that's exciting. We got some of his outstanding team today too, so I'm gonna let them take over and I'm gonna learn with you guys. What is it we do here? Exactly. I know, not sure. You guys have a lot of cool equipment, I know that. So Chief Razor, they are yours. We got Stu online. Hi, Stu. How many people enrolled in this course? Oh, thanks, Stu.
Our neighbor.
16 or 17. Okay.
Hey Sue, can you hear us? All right, you're muted. Would you mind unmuting real quick? And
Yep,
there you go. Okay, perfect.
perfect. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, good afternoon, everybody. As Sabrina introduced, I'm Marshall. I am the newest fire chief. Been in this position not even quite a month now. And so I'll let you in on a little secret. So sorry about the little bit of delay. But we all know what the definition of chaos is, right? Yeah. Well, the fire service, the guys have a very affectionate name and acronym for chaos. Means the chief has arrived on scene. So that's just par for this course. We've just got our with Windows 10 getting phased out. We're moving to Windows 11. IT has been phenomenal coming in and upgrading all of our equipment. But with that, that's given us a little bit of challenges with getting their systems up and running. And so for that, I apologize. So the plan for us for this hour.
The Zoom is facing us and not you.
Yeah, it's get away.
I already.
Well,
That's because the camera's up above.
yeah, unfortunately,
Stu, you're just gonna face the audience with this one due to the room setup.
I will let before I go out of my presentation, I will turn and face so that you can see me and whatnot. So that's one of the limitations is our camera's right above me, obviously. So for this hour, our plan is that we're gonna spend, each one of us is gonna spend about 5 to 7 minutes just going over a high level overview of what our roles and responsibilities are. Talk about some of the handouts that we have in front of you. And then we want to let you guys take some time and go through the station and tour the station. It is a working fire station, so you're going to be potentially hearing tones go off as the apparatus are going by, the sirens as they get onto the road. And we'll be mindful in the engine bay, if people are coming and going, it'll be safe. But there is turnout sometimes on the floors, and it's not, always ready for show and tell because it is, like I said, a working fire station. And so the guys are constantly going in and out of training and moving and whatnot. So as I mentioned, each one of you should have the handout that I'm going to be just covering. So a little bit about me. I've been in the fire service for over 28 years. I started out up in the Willamette Valley. My hometown was Canby, and I started volunteering with them. From there, I obtained my EMT certifications through Clackamas Community College, eventually going to OHSU for my paramedic certification. After getting my paramedic, I started working with McMinnville Fire. That was a part-time position. And then I was fortunate and have been very fortunate and blessed in my career that I was hired by the city of Ashland in 2003. And from there, I have been able to stay with the department, working from the ranks of firefighter was trained in, you have to be, on, certified and eligible as an engineer to then move on to the next step. I never served any time in the capacity of engineer. I was trained and certified that. Bumped to engineer, went to captain, served in that position for about 6-7 years, became battalion chief, then had the opportunity, I believe in 23, no, it was the fall of 22, to serve under the former fire chief as the operations chief for the department. And then since March of his retirement, served in capacity of interim fire chief, and then recently just been promoted to full-time fire chief. So, as you're gonna hear, Ashland Fire is unique. We have an ambulance service. We're not only just a suppression, but we do have an ambulance service. Our ambulance service area is 650 square miles. So with that, we have what you'll hear is our dual role, as we call them. They're the paramedics and EMTs that are trained to not only do medical, but they're trained in firefighting, and they have our protective personal gear, we call it PPE, to be able to go into hazardous situations and what we call IDLH environments, which is immediately dangerous to life and health, with SCBAs, and there are suppression folks. Last couple of years, we were fortunate enough to bring on another program, our single role program. We currently have 8 slots in that program, and they are just members that are solely designed, and their mission is just to run medical calls. That's all they do, is they handle and run medical calls, which, and why the duplication? Well, we ran dual roles for a long time. We need to find out ways that were more efficient, cost effective, and there was times that, didn't have enough resources for the right calls. This is then twofold. It's getting, having dedicated personnel for EMS, and then allowing the dual roles to be available for company inspections, which Chief Shea will be talking about later, and some of the other functions that we're required. So
Are you
one
taking
thing,
questions now?
yes, ma'am.
When we call for an ambulance, is it one of your employees who will respond in the ambulance? Or do you also farm out the EMT work?
No, so to answer that, majority of the time, I don't want to say it will always be, but realistically, it will be our personnel and City of Ashland employees. The reason I say it will not, and I cannot always say that, is that we do have reciprocity and we do have mutual aid with Mercy flights. That if our system becomes inundated with medical calls and we can't, and it's all of our units are available, because we only have the capability of running X amount of calls at one time. And if our system gets overloaded, Mercy can come in and help out. It has not been that I'm aware of in my time, but Rogue River Fire District 1, which is they're an ambulance transporting, they could even come down. We have from our physician advisor, who's Dr. Bond, we have a protocol that if we had a significant event with a lot of patients, that pulls in, all of our resources in the county and outside. So yes, but primarily it'll be Ashland Fire Rescue and City of Ashland employees.
Thanks.
Yep, you're welcome. So the one chart that I'd like to in front of you is our org chart. And so the fire services run as a paramilitary organization. We have span of control, we have ranking structure, and that helps with, hierarchy, control on a scene, who's following, who's giving the orders, who's following the orders and whatnot. So typical span of control is a person oversees 3 to 7 people. You get more than that, then you start losing the ability to effectively, manage and oversee the people that are working under you. We run under, as me as the fire chief, I oversee the head of the department. I'm set the framework for how the department is going to run, operationally, how we're going to look, EMS service wise. We have guidelines and parameters that we work under, but then I set that tone and set that direction, and then Chief Shea and Chief Stubbs handle the boots on the ground, the everyday day-to-day management of that. Chief Stubbs, Todd Stubbs, he oversees the operational side of the, suppression and EMS. Chief Shea oversees the Fire and Life Safety Division, which then breaks out into the Wildfire Division. With the handout that I given earlier, we run under a council manager form of government. The council obviously has their priorities and sets their policies that we then, shape how kind of guides our direction. A simple one is like, well, what does that mean? What does that look like? Simply is that we want to be a clean, energy efficient city. So when I purchase apparatus, I see, what can I do to meet that initiative and that goal? One of the things that we did do is that historically 10, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, we would buy ambulances that were diesel powered because they would last 10, 15 years because we just wouldn't put the mileage or the call volume on them. Nowadays, our call volume is increased. The miles that we're putting on them, ambulances are not lasting much more than 10 to 12 years. So the ambulances are wearing out, the engine's not. So we're then switching over to a gas engine in the vehicles to meet those. We're running instead of on our hydraulic equipment, the hydraulic equipment uses for extrication, getting into vehicles and whatnot. They used to be a gas powered plant that ran hydraulics. We're now running battery operated tools and stuff. So not always can we meet because you can't have a fire engine with solar power. Sorry, the technologies, it will get there someday, but the technology just doesn't have it that, that they have, we carry 800 gallons of water on there. We would be taking that capacity with batteries at this point in time. Not saying that it won't be out there and at some point, but just today the technology is not there. And so then my boss, Sabrina, who I report directly to her. And then from there, oversee the operation, like I mentioned earlier, the operational EMS and these gentlemen. And my role is to work with other agencies, being Ashland Community Hospital, our ECSO, which is the Emergency Communications of Southern Oregon, our dispatch center, the Rogue Valley Fire Chiefs, the Oregon State Fire Marshal's Office, and other agencies, in the area, collaborative and mutual aid agreements, and whatnot. Emergency management is on there because formerly the emergency management office fell under the fire chief. But as you probably, if you have not learned or been covered yet, but we have a former battalion chief that is now the city's emergency manager. And so he has taken along a bulk of that. We still work closely with him in preparation. There was a lot of work done this summer on wildfire. But wildfire is a big topic in this city, but we do have an interstate that's transporting hazardous material. We do have, the potential for flooding, earthquake, those things are, we need to be prepared if in the event those should occur. How are we going to respond? What resources? It's going to be, it's not going to be just a fire department response. This is going to require our civilian team, the CERT group. It's going to workings with the RVTD, other hotel services, the Jackson County Emergency Manager's Office. And so with that, Kelly is now, forming and handling those relationships and those overnight. So along that, the unsexy stuff, the department budget biennium, creating and working with the budget. Work with the city on, provide, insight and direction of any capital improvements that we need. Keep a pulse on how with the bills and legislation from federal government, how it could impact ambulance billing revenue coming in. We rely on a number of grants throughout the years for assistance they've purchased our, self-contained breathing apparatus, which we call SCBA's, excuse me. Station 2, we have a brand new, washer and dryer for cleaning our turnouts. That was through grant funding. Over the years, we've gotten a lot of grant funding that may or may not be, available in the next couple of years. It may take, a little hiatus and come back. That's my goal. Hopefully it'll never go away, but you don't know. But just keeping, because Sabrina's overseeing the landscape of the city and all the different departments. My job is to focus on what's going to affect us in the public safety from the fire aspect and report to her and plan for contingencies and how we're going to operate. So that is it for me. That's kind of, is there any questions that you might have of me before I turn it over to?
I only have one comment. 3 years ago, for the first time in my life, I needed an ambulance. And I can't express how great you folks were, whoever came to help me.
I appreciate that.
I wrote a letter expressing it back then, but it was phenomenal the way I was treated. I'm overwhelmed.
I appreciate it. I enjoy, I know that we can't meet everybody's expectations. We try our hardest. But hearing that, I greatly appreciate that.
I appreciated it.
The, there are a number, 14 different fire agencies in the Rogue Valley. And what we all have a similar mission and purpose and way you wouldn't know on a fire ground, all the different, some of our turnouts are different colors and whatnot. But there's a uniqueness to Ashland that I'm going to brag about a little bit, is that we run a significant call volume load, and the men and women that work for this organization are so adaptable, and that they're so willing to turn from, if they're dropping after completing a call and dropping somebody off the hospital, if they're returning, whether it's in Medford, here in the city, they will jump the call. A lot of times they don't even have to, the battalion chief, who you'll hear about in his role, will, it's seamless. The guys the men and women do their darndest to not have to have mercy flights come in. It's not a bad thing if they do. I'm not saying that. It's just that this is our home. We want to be taking care of, our things. And, pivoting from going from a gas leak to possible structure fire to changing and, maybe mid-route going on a high acuity medical call. And the seamlessness and the fluidity of that is really pretty incredible. And I'm really proud of them.
You mentioned that there's hazardous materials going up and down the freeway. How
Yes,
about
ma'am.
the train tracks, the trains? Are they carrying anything hazardous?
Not that I'm aware of. It's not a main line. It's a branch line. If I'm remembering correctly, there is lumber material, but I'm not aware of anything. That would be
Chemicals or-
something that we would be notified of and whatnot. And so it's not something that has come across our radar. Yes, sir.
I have a few questions. I'm going to look for short answers. On your organization chart here, Todd Stubbs has a line to the blue battalion chief and the pink battalion chief, but not over to the green battalion chief.
And now
That's because I don't like him. It's the answer. There's a little one right here. But I don't see all.
So
it should connect.
this person does oversee this. Okay,
Yes, sir.
another question. What's the difference between an EMT and a paramedic?
It is the scope of work that they can, their medical training and the what they can administer, like a EMT cannot administer all the medications that a paramedic can. They can't do all the procedures that a paramedic can. It's just a lower level of medical training. And so their capabilities and what they're allowed to do under our physician advisor and in the scope of is less.
Okay, is everybody here either an EMT or a paramedic?
Yes, sir.
In the early 70s, I actually got a EMT certificate, and I think that was maybe the early days of EMT stuff. And I went only through a 40, I think it's a 40-hour.
Of course.
It's, what is it today? I know it's much more.
So a paramedic, the state of Oregon, like with all of the, is that we require a 2-year associate degree on top of the paramedic certification. And a lot of, we're trying to get, typically it's 9 months through the didactic and the curriculum. Because after they go through the classroom portion of it, they actually go out in the field and do ride time with an agency. Since we're a transporting agency, we have a lot of EMT students, either EMT or paramedic students that come and do ride time with us. And then they have to go through a national registry test.
So, yeah, it's hour-wise, but it's, but must be up to 200 hours or something.
Well, I know that the recertification, our recertification is every 2 years, and I believe it's 240 hours for paramedic research, and that's just the research, so I couldn't remember.
For EMT, for basic level EMT, it's about 300 hours.
Oh,
So it's two consecutive community college terms. So 6 months, 2 nights a week, 3.5 hours each night. One night of those is dedicated to lecture. One night of those is dedicated to lab, so hands-on, with additional internship time in both an ambulance setting and an emergency room setting. Plus then testing at a state and national level, both kind of a written, like, can you answer the questions and can you perform the skills?
I have a question on hydrants, because I volunteer with the police and we do a hydrant run to make sure nobody's parking by the hydrants.
Mhm.
There are not a lot of hydrants in Ashland. From what I've seen, and it's like, oh, this place doesn't even have a hydrant. So how do you get your water to the fires?
So each fire engine, we carry 800 gallons of water, and a lot of times, about 150 gallons can put out a room and contents fire. And so, but then also with that, and this is operating, but we have what we call LDH, large diameter hose, which there's 800 feet of that, so we can extend them. And then with the way the engines, and I bore you with all the technical, but we can set engines up, so one engine could be at a fire hydrant and it could pump and supply pressure to another one. So we can do 1,600, feet longer. And there's, we don't have time to bring it in today, but if we did an overlay of our hydrants in the city, there actually is quite a few, and there's actually, and Mark can speak to the code, but hydrants are required in so many, so many feet of something. So they may not be, where you would think they were or that, but they're within the range. So we're actually very fortunate in our water supply. A lot of departments use engines to boost the pressure of their systems. We actually use our engines to kind of reduce the pressure because we have such phenomenal, the water department does a great job. So, but, I'd be curious to where you're not finding the hydrant in the city.
See, in the maps, in the city maps, is there the layer of the hydrants?
In the GIS layer, yeah.
Okay.
And then it would also, I just caution you, is that we do have some unincorporated portions of the county in our city and
Right.
where the boundary is, so that could be
I'll have to
You
look
know.
at that.
the
Yeah,
question.
yeah.
So I totally blew out my 5 to 7 minutes, so I'm gonna turn it over to Todd.
Yeah, look,
you're in the,
Your stuff is.
is it? That's up to it. Thank you.
Want us to do that for you? Or you could start talking?
Sure. And you can think around where.
I'll just send it.
Oh, you don't have one?
I do,
Yeah.
if you have extra ones, I'll back up.
Right here? Who's yours?
Okay, so my name's Todd. I've been with Ashland since 2004. And I started out at Phoenix Fire when they had a city fire department before that, in 1999. And so when I got my EMT originally, it was a 6-week class on weekends. It was an accelerated one, and then my paramedic class was at Umpqua, which was actually 5 terms. They do a longer program, and so it took me about 2 years to get my paramedic by the time I did my internship. I started out here as a firefighter and promoted to captain. I got to move up as an engineer, but like Marshall, I never actually held that position. And then I promoted to battalion chief when Kelly became the emergency manager for the city. And then I wanted to retire, and they told me I had to stay. And then you do this. Which is
You post it.
But it's been really fun. It's been great working with Marshall. I've learned a lot about what a deputy chief does, because he did it, and now he's my boss, and so I'm constantly learning new stuff every day, which is really, it's fun. That's why you guys are here, just to learn, and we all like that. So I oversee the operations side of the fire department. So all the people that go on 911 calls, that's my side of the fire department. We have 30 firefighters, and that includes firefighters, engineers, the people that drive the fire trucks, the captains. We have a captain, 2 captains on each day, and so they're responsible for the entire fire station. And then we have 1 battalion chief that works out of this station, and he oversees the 2 captains. And then the battalion chiefs report to me. And so that way, I don't have 30 people that I have to manage. I really have 3. And then everybody else kind of works for those. And so that way, when I have to tell somebody to do something, I just tell the battalion chief, and then all this stuff kind of rolls down. And we also have 8 single role people. We have 4 EMTs, and currently two paramedics. And we just did a hiring process and started 1. So hopefully we'll be able to bring on 2 more and get back to 8 total people. And so the single roles really are first out people for EMS. And they run EMS calls when they're here. They work 12-hour shifts. And then our firefighters work a 48-96 schedule. So as you can see, there's A shift, which is green, B shift, which is blue, and C shift, which is red. And so those guys all come to work for 2 days. Wow. And then they go home for 4 days, and then they come back. So it's a 56-hour work week. That's what they end up working. Oh. And so a big part of my job has been this. I started in just kind of March, a little bit early, but really June. I work with a lot with the other agencies, with District 5 in particular, as they're our neighbors. They've had some issues in their department with budget, and they lost their battalion chief position. And so one thing we decided to do is that our battalion chiefs would be their battalion chiefs. And so they don't have to do the hire or the scheduling and stuff, but all the calls that happen in Fire District 5, our battalion chief will go and run that call if it requires that level of supervision. And it's really worked great. Not only does it help them, it helps the city of Ashland, because now we're controlling all the fire engines in the south part of the county. And so if all of our fire engines are busy, we move one of theirs into town to cover, and vice versa. And so it's really worked well. District 5 really likes our battalion chiefs and how we operate. It's gone really smooth.
Where is District 5?
Talent, Phoenix, and Emigrant Lake area, and all the way around us.
And when does the battalion chief have to be involved?
So the battalion chiefs respond on motor vehicle accidents, all fires, wildland fires, and cardiac arrests. And then any other time the engine captain thinks that they need another layer of supervision, because if they're too busy doing the job and they need a supervisor there to provide safety, they can call anytime. Okay. The battalion chiefs are now pretty busy. which is fine, because they like to run calls too.
Yeah.
What else do I do? I oversee a lot of our SOPs and SOGs on the operations side. So I've been rewriting a lot of those this year. That's kind of fun. Doesn't make everybody happy, but we try to make everything as fair as possible, but also get the job done.
What's an SOG?
A standard operating guideline. So we have standard operating policies, which is something that the way it's written is how it needs to be done. We have very few of those. We have a lot of standard operating guidelines, which is kind of how you would do it. And so a big one that I'm working on currently is our battalion chiefs work on staffing. So every time somebody takes the day off, a firefighter takes a day of vacation, we currently run an 8-10 staffing model. So we have 10 guys on each shift. We can have 2 people off. But sometimes if it's a captain and we need another captain, we have to pay somebody else overtime. So they have to hire that position out. And so they send out an email, everybody gets it, or a text message, and then they can respond and take that shift. And so the battalion chiefs spend a lot of their time in the office doing that most mornings is trying to staff the fire department because people like to take their vacations. Yeah.
Can you give us an idea of your call load and 1 a day, 10 a day, or
We, as a department, we are running probably 18 to 20 calls a day. And we should be, I think, around 6,600 calls.
I know a lot of them go to Mountain Meadows.
Good amount, that was a fair amount.
They need a substation there.
We've said that before too.
I live there.
And so that's a fire alarm, and so that'll be an engine company and the battalion chief go over the picture. Okay. Another thing I do is I conduct hiring processes and promotional processes. So when I took this job, we needed to replace me. I was a battalion chief. And so we did a battalion chief test. And so before that, to prepare the guys that wanted to take that position, we ran an academy. So I put together a battalion chief academy. We taught them all about the job. We taught them about leadership and how to run all the computer programs. And we brought in HR and we brought in a leadership trainer. And they learned all about how to do the job. And then we had a test. And Nick Palmisano, one of the captains, came on under that. And so then he got the job. And so that's a lot of my time also. What else do I do? Changing our staffing model currently. We since we've had promotions and retirements. So I'm down 2 paramedics at the single role level. And so I'm moving people around. I'm gonna make it where we only have 2 medic units a day, which is the single role people. Or 1 per day instead of 2. And then 2 of the single roles I'm gonna put onto a 48-96 shift until I can hire 2 more. And that's gonna help reduce overtime. It's gonna help with force hires. Sometimes if we can't fill a position and we need to, we make people come to work. And that's just part of what you do when you sign up for this job is sometimes you're told, hey, this day you're gonna have to come to work. And it's kind of understood and it's okay. Most people don't get offended, so every now and then. Most of the time we have people that like to work a lot of overtime and some people don't. During the summer, a lot of times, especially during fire season, the battalion chiefs, if they get a wildland fire, all 3 of us work as what's called duty officer. For some reason, they always seem to call me. Just to call you a little bit.
No complaints.
Yeah. And so I get to come back in. So if there's a wildland fire in the evening after I've gone home, a lot of times I'll come back in. And that battalion chief is already on scene running that call. Most of the time I'll come back in and take the city, which means that I will switch the battalion chief phone over to my phone. And that way when the hospital calls for a transfer and things like that, or if there's another call that requires the chief, then I'll take that call. And sometimes I'll go to the fire too and kind of watch and see, because we all want to be doing the fun stuff. And the other thing I do, there's a big sort of sheet on your table. And that shows all the programs we have in the fire department. So we have peer support, we have an EMS committee, we have an apparatus advisory committee. We have a technical rescue team, we have a whole ton of different programs. And so all the people in the fire department kind of work on those programs. They're not just sitting around here waiting for the alarm to go off. They're ordering medical supplies. They're figuring out what kind of fire engine we want to order. They're planning training. So there's all these jobs they do. And I kind of oversee a lot of those programs. So when they have, they want to spend money on something, or they want to conduct a training, that's kind of like my wheelhouse, is to help them manage it. Is there any questions about?
How are personnel split between fire station 1 and 2? Is it 2 battalions here and 1 battalion there?
So, yeah, so, fire station 1 always has a fire engine available, so they're a dedicated engine, so there's 2 or 3 people on that. We have 2 firefighters on a squad, so it's at least 1 paramedic and 1 EMT on an ambulance that we call a squad. And then we have the night shift medic unit, so it's another ambulance with single role paramedic and EMT on that. And so, and then we have the battalion unit. Station 2 will have less staffing usually. It either has a captain and an engineer that co-staff an ambulance and a fire engine. And sometimes we'll have the captain, engineer, and 2 firefighters on a squad. And then for the morning shift, 7 AM to 7 PM, we have a single role ambulance also.
Did you explain the minimum and maximum staffing and how that?
Yeah, so we have 8, 10, so we have 10 people on shift every day is our maximum. 2 people can take the day off before we have to hire back, so 8's our minimum. And so when we're at 8, we only have 2 people at station 2 on the dual role side, on the fire side. And then at 10, we'll have 4 at station 2 and 6 over here.
So this is station 1.
Yep.
Where is station 2?
It's at Ashland Street, by the cemetery.
Right before you go over the bridge.
It's 1860 Ashland Street, just before the overpass heading out of town.
To the
on
south?
the left-hand
Yeah.
side.
Oh, okay. And
Yeah,
then,
you've been by it a million times.
On the way to
Weimar.
where?
on the way to Weimar. from
Weimar,
here.
okay, and you have
What's the sculpture?
you have substations too?
Nope, we just have 2 stations.
Oh, okay.
You may have covered this when I stepped out, but when you have a medical response, you roll a lot of equipment.
Sometimes
Yeah,
we
I mean,
don't.
so you see a fire engine, you see an ambulance, you see a police car. It seems like a lot of duplicative,
So it depends on the type of call. And so if we're talking just medical calls only, because fire calls, we roll a lot more people. But on a medical call, if it's a priority 1 call and a lot of priority 2 calls, we'll send the engine and the ambulance. And so if it's like a fall or a lower priority call, like just somebody's just ill, then we just send the ambulance. And why we do this, let's take a chest pain call. So if somebody's having cardiac chest pain, they call 911. We have to do a 12 lead on that patient as soon as possible. We're gonna have to start an IV, we're gonna have to give medications, and we're gonna have to move them out of their house or wherever they're at to the ambulance. And hopefully we don't make them walk, because that's not good for you if you're having a heart attack. And so we want to carry. And so that requires more people. If somebody has the flu and they're just throwing up, 2 people can go take care of that person and it's fine. But on a higher acuity call, then we have more people. On a cardiac arrest, that's why we have the battalion chief go too, just because it takes more people to run those calls. And a lot of times on a cardiac arrest, even the other engine from the other station will just go and help. It just, some calls require more person.
thank you.
Yeah.
There's a emergency freeway entrance up on North Mountain.
Yeah,
So in the case of emergency, who is it the fire department that would be in charge of unblocking that and directing people there? How does that
so
work?
technically ODOT, I think, is gonna open that up. And also they're gonna need to probably control the freeway a little bit, so there is a way to merge. Saturday, we're gonna try it out. I don't know if you know, there's an evacuation drill on Saturday. You can sign up for that,
On our website.
it's on the website. And part of the plan is to try that out. We're gonna, well, the emergency manager's office is gonna direct people out Mountain Street, and then from there to the airport and get on the freeway, and they'll have the A lane closed on the freeway. And so it'll be a good initial, we'll see how it works.
So I have a key, Todd has a key, Mark, the chief officers and the battalion chiefs have keys.
Have a key?
You got it all along, a key. But as Todd mentioned, you know, we don't want to be doing that because we're putting traffic into a active freeway. So ODOT needs to actually control that with OSP long before that on ramp. So if the worst case scenario were to happen, we could control it and we could, you know, use our vehicles. But one, it takes us out of the firefight or the immediate emergency. But we want them to, because it is technically a state freeway and interstate that they should be controlling, and so they should be, but if in an event, if needed, we do have that, we just don't make that rule a lot very public, but. So, hope that answers your.
It's really only a mass evacuation that it would ever.
Any other questions I can answer?
Did I understand correctly that it's divided between the firefighters and the medical? So the medical folks don't deal with fires.
Correct. The medical, our single role medical people only respond to medical calls. That's their job, and the goal was to try to make it so that our dual role, our firefighter people who also respond to medical calls are free more often. So if we do have that wildland fire, they're available to go on that or that structure fire. And also it gives us some time, we can get some training in, which is with our call volume become hard to do. And also they can do some fire prevention stuff like inspections and public education and things like that.
Okay.
Mark, you ready?
Yeah. All right, good afternoon. I'm Mark Shea, the fire marshal. I don't have a great handout for you, sorry. But we'll talk here for a few minutes. My history of the fire service, worked in the fire service for 29 years, all of that in the valley, most of that in Justine County, where I spent a lot of time working on a fire engine and an ambulance, transitioned to a fire marshal role over there. Then worked for the city of Medford for a while as a deputy fire marshal, where I did fire inspections, fire investigations, and oversaw the wildfire mitigation program for city of Medford. And then almost 2 years ago, came here to the city of Ashland as the fire marshal. So in this role, I oversee risk reduction. Essentially, I am the risk manager for the community. And that has a few different aspects to it. One of those is being the fire code official. So the fire code in a book format is like a really big book with a lot of fine print. And that book, that code is law just like anything else is law. And it's law at the state level. So it's my job to make sure that we are enforcing that and we're working with that. That's part of that is fire inspections. Okay, and folks think of fire inspections and they go, oh, you know, you're checking the fire extinguisher and you're checking exits. And that's part of it. But really what the fire code does is it looks at everything. It looks at the whole building. Once you build a commercial building, so not your home, but any commercial building, once you build that, it's now the responsibility of the fire code official to make sure that all those codes in that building are maintained. And that can even go to lighting, right? Because lighting helps egress. That can go to door size and door openings. There's a lot of stuff that the fire code touches. So it's my job to make sure that we are working through that and that businesses are safe. We do that through a series of inspections. I also, in part of fire code, do plan reviews. So anytime anybody wants to develop property or build property, those plans go to our community development department. They send them to me as well. So I look at it initially at the planning stage, and then I'll look at the plans at the building construction stage, both for adherence to the fire code.
This is commercial only, not residential, is that right?
I look at residential at the planning stage as well. And so at the planning stage, what we're looking for is two aspects, access and water supply. I need to make sure that if you have an emergency in your residential home, that we can get there to provide service. And that if it's a fire, we're gonna have water to put out the fire. So do that. Also, as a fire code official, I'm the lead fire investigator for the city. So if we have any fires, Oregon law says that all fires have to be investigated. So I'm gonna be the main person to make sure that that gets done. If it's a particularly complex fire or a fatal fire or a crime, I'm going to be the person conducting that investigation and working with our police department to make sure that we have a good cooperative, thorough investigation on that. Also, as part of the fire code official, I lead public education. So we, teach fire extinguisher classes. We're going to teach folks how to be safe with fire. Part of that is our open house. So this Friday from 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. at Station 2 on Ashland Street, we have an open house. Come by, say hi, check out Station 2. This month, October is Fire Prevention Month. The theme is lithium ion battery safety because there's a whole bunch of new battery technology out there and those can be pretty dangerous. So we're going to have some material on that so you can learn about that, meet some different folks, see via the station. So it's kind of it as well. And then wildfire. Wildfire we know is a major problem in not only our community, but statewide. So part of my job is overseeing our wildfire division and wildfire mitigation, wildfire prevention, right? With that, we do things like home assessments. We'll go out to your home and take a look, give you some ideas on ways that you can improve, make your home safer. We also work with community on how to be adapted to smoke, right? Smoke happens every summer. It's going to happen. How do we live with it? It's kind of part of the public education format, if you will, as well. And then additionally, kind of at a very high level, overseeing the management of our municipal forest and what's called our community wildfire protection plan, which Chris Chambers here in a couple of minutes is going to go a little bit more in depth on. Really at a high level, that's what I do. Any questions for me? Yeah.
So in your role as risk manager for the city and trying to mitigate risk, why is it that evacuation of the city or the ability to evacuate is not a part of the consideration of development of properties within the city?
It's a good question and it's a complex question or it's a complex answer.
Okay.
Part of that, as being the fire code official, I have a defined path, right? And that's the Oregon Fire Code. And so I have to follow that when it comes to street width, if you will, which doesn't always align with what we might like as a community, but I can't go out of those bounds. So there's that. There's also planning code. I'm not as familiar with, how the community development department and planning enforces that, but they've got their own set of rules. I know Kelly Burns, the emergency manager, since he's been in that role, that's an important aspect of what he's doing, is trying to evaluate that. It's going to take us, I think, some time to improve, right? Some of the stuff we do, like the fire code, that's a state code. That's gonna take a lot to change it for the entire state of Oregon. I think with Kelly's work, you know, he's looking to make things better locally as much as we can. So all that to say, I guess, it's considered and we appreciate, you know, that concern and that need, but there's only so much that we can do kind of within the boundaries that we have to work.
So is the city contemplating adding local code that might address that issue?
Okay, I would say no.
So
Yeah,
that's really, so that question would better be directed at council, because that's gonna be a policy
Of course,
decision.
of
for the
course.
city council.
Yeah.
So council's priority right now is to increase our housing stock, right, which seems counter to even some of the recommendations in the CWP, right? So that's
Absolutely.
the hard part of being an elected official, I'm sure they'll tell you, is that there's a lot of competing interests when it comes to that. So as city staff, you know, we follow the direction of council and try to balance those priorities with kind of the lanes, as, you know, Marcus pointed out, that we have to abide by with state law. So, you know, we'll continue to do what we can do within kind of our box of like doing the mass evacuation drill that we're doing on Saturday. We all signed up for that, you know, sending out information about knowing your zones, being prepared. And then also at the end of the day, it's really a personal decision about your risk tolerance for where you decide to reside, right? So I think, you know, we're not unaware that we live in a community that's more prone to wildfire than other potential communities we would reside in. And so that's a decision that's made. And then how do you navigate that personally and feel comfortable and have your plan for how you're gonna address that threat moving forward? So while we'd like to make Mark in charge of many things, that is not one of his things.
With wildfire becoming a bigger thing, and I really call this thing urban interface area that we're in, and the fires that we're California, do different fire groups compare notes and hey, this is what we learned at, you know, Altadena. And
yeah,
their information, is that a thing?
yeah, it most certainly is. Best practices, you know, from community to community on prevention, mitigation, suppression. We share through different professional networks. We share through different conferences we go to. You know, myself and Chris are both on several advisory boards at the state, at the national level.
LA brought Paradise folks up and worked with our teams here. So there's a lot of information.
Ashland is and has been for a very long time at the forefront of wildfire prevention and mitigation. We still are, and our goal is to continue that and to continue getting better. So we are learning from others and we're trying to apply what we learn here.
Are the controlled burns that are done from the forest, is that Ashland Fire Rescue that does that, or?
Some of it is, and some of it's the Forest Service, yeah.
And after significant events like the fire in Hawaii, Paradise, Palisades, there's after action reviews that are created. And in that, they're not to be warm and fuzzy, they're to, you know, talk about, you know, what worked, what didn't work, where systems failed. And we even had one after that, I mean, and those are all made public and we, you know, review those too as part of, you know, how we shape moving forward.
Do you have a question?
Yeah, do you ever find that you have to, inspect a residential or commercial property that may have to develop a fire hazard, like, you know, a lot of undergrowth or wood around the property or something, and you just sort of see it, and go inspect it?
So on the residential aspect, like we're talking essentially a fire hazard on the outside, that would be handled through our municipal code. So we have a couple different municipal codes that would touch. One, if it's tall weeds, it's a municipal code that specifically regulates tall weeds. And we enforce that primarily in the summer months. So a couple ways we can do that is if we see it, we will work with that homeowner to cut their grass. And if after a couple of warnings they don't, then the city will cut their grass for them. And there will be a legal process to recoup the cost of that. Also, if they have a bunch of junk piled up, that's a different municipal code, and that's handled by our city code enforcement officer who works for the community development department. Those can either be something that the city employee sees and handles, or we have the online portal C-Click Fix through our website or on your phone. You can report those, and then when you report those, we'll go out and handle it.
On the same topic, sometimes I do see very, very large fields of, I don't know if it's dried grass or dried hay or whatever. And I understood there's some kind of regulation about that and. But it's just,
Can you report it?
You can report it. There's, and I don't have the knowledge off the top of my head. Chris probably does better than I do, so please pipe in. There is a certain lot size where you're not required to abate or cut the entire lot. You need to cut an area around essentially roadways and other homes, and you could basically have an island of taller grass in that.
An acre and over, you don't have to cut it off.
Thank you.
Just real quick, 'cause we
What
hit
was that
2
again?
o'clock.
1 acre and over, you don't have to cut
So
it.
technically, we're done at 2,
you don't have to. do it.
but I know you all want to see the fire engine. So
Okay.
Chief Razor has said we
Fuel
can,
breaks
we can
around.
keep going, but if anyone needs to go, 'cause it is 2 PM, don't feel weird about just exiting, and thanks for coming today. Otherwise, we're gonna keep rolling until the chief takes us out. Does that work for everybody?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, carry on.
All right, anything else for me?
Yeah.
Okay, Chris Chambers, our forestry officer.
Thank you, thank you. Hey, everybody, how's it
Hey.
going? Good to be here. My name is Chris Chambers, as Chief Shade said. I've worked here at Ashland Fire and Rescue for just over 23 years now, which seems incredible to me every day I think that. But time does fly by, as we all know. I started out growing up here in Ashland, so I'm a native, born at Ashland Community Hospital, actually. I've got deep roots here in Ashland. My family is all here, my brother's family, my wife's family, her brother's family. So we got everybody here in Ashland. So I have a deep passion for this community. I love Ashland and I love working here and serving the community. And we'll continue to do so until they kick me out or if I decide to retire. So my job is primarily about forestry. I have a background in forestry, a degree from Oregon State University. I worked for the U.S. Forest Service. My first fire season was 1997, working up by Crater Lake. And so I've done a lot of different things out in the woods, as we say. But I was really happy to get a job here in Ashland. You may not know this, but you are the proud owners of your own forest. The community owns 1,100 acres of forest land. That includes portions of Lithia Park, Strawberry Hall Park, Siskiyou Mountain Park, the lower watershed trails area. So there's a lot of the forests that make Ashland so beautiful and such a great place to live and attract so many people that are owned by the community itself. And then also we border national forest system lands. So the Rogue River Siskiyou National Forest is the vast majority of the Ashland watershed. So when you look up in the hills, you see a lot of city lands, but then beyond that, as you go all the way up to the ski area, a lot of that is national forest system lands. And importantly, of all of that water that accumulates up there, drains into Reeder Reservoir, probably another class you're going to take with Public Works, if you haven't already, talking about our water system. We collect that water and that becomes the drinking water for the city of Ashland. By far and away, the majority of our water comes from the forests in the Ashland Creek watershed. So what happens there ends up in our bodies. And because we are over 60% water, that's really important that we have clean, clear, and hopefully copious drinking water coming from our forests. So that translates directly to how we treat our forests. And, wildfire is certainly a big threat to forest health. and the purity, clarity of our drinking water. We've seen plenty of examples across the western landscapes of burned watersheds that have resulted in really bad drinking water for nearby communities. A lot of communities, if not most, have their community drinking water comes at some point from a forest around them. So managing forests for water quality is really important. We also have other values. Of course, we have homes that are built up next to and inside the forest, inside the city limits even. We've got wildlife habitat, we have recreation. One of the right reasons that a lot of people come to Ashland, either as visitors or as citizens, is because you can just walk right out your back door into the forest and go for a beautiful hike and be back, leave before breakfast and be back for toast and bacon and eggs by 8 o'clock. So that drives a lot of the quality of life of Ashland and being able to, look out and see this beautiful landscape. It certainly is a lot more beautiful when it's green than if it were to burn and turn black. So there's a lot of values in our forest lands, and that is really the center of my job, is managing that 1,100 acres of forest, but it's also interfacing with the other agencies who we kind of co-manage this landscape with. Sometimes it's private landowners, it's the US Forest Service, it's the Oregon Department of Forestry, it's nonprofits like Lomacatsi Restoration and the Nature Conservancy. One big project that I worked on for almost 20 years, which is crazy to think I've worked on something for 20 years, is Ashland Forest Resiliency, a project that we started undertaking with our first community wildfire protection plan in 2004. Actually, a year before that, in 2003, we started the planning for that, actually approved the plan through City Council in 2004, and then we actually kicked off a project of doing work in our forests to reduce fire danger, create healthier forests that could withstand fire. And that project, Ashland Forest Resiliency, lasted up until just last year when we basically did all the work that we set out to do and even more. So we still maintain those relationships with our community partners, and the things like we see commonly in prescribed burns up in the hills, and you see smoke, you might get a notification on your phone that there's a burn happening. We do that to maintain our forests in a low flammability state, so that when we do have a summer wildfire, because we know wildfires are going to happen, that fires can happen and we can have the ability to put them out safely for firefighters with as minimal amount of damage to the forest and our resources as possible, and as little exposure to the community in terms of needed evacuations and air quality impacts and impacts to recreation as possible. So that encompasses a lot of work. And just to kind of wrap up that portion of it, what we do with all that, and in part, is we create a map like this, which we call our Tactical Opportunities Fire Response Map. Thank you for being that. You're welcome. It's a up and down map, but that's all. Okay, so what we have mapped all the work we've done, so think of a network of fire breaks around the forest and around the city. It goes all the way down into the city. That way we know when there's a fire, oh, okay, we did some work here, like these areas with the hatches or the lines are prescribed fires that we have intentionally set under safe conditions in order to consume fuels ahead of the fire and also to keep forests healthy. So those are scattered all over the landscape. So these kinds of maps ride around with our chief officers. So whoever shows up at a fire, if it's a wildfire, this map can get rolled out. We say, the fire is here. This is where we have an opportunity. And in fact, I rolled to the fire, Neal Creek Fire this summer with this map and spread it out on the hood of a truck with the Oregon Department of Forestry. And like, okay, if the fire starts going that way, this is where we're going to catch it. And it started to spread that way, and they were prepping that fuel break to help catch the fire, but it didn't ultimately go up that high. But a good example of how useful this kind of map is to help us both plan the work that we're going to do in the future, as well as respond to fires in the present time. Cool. Yeah, thanks.
Gosh, so that's really interesting. Please bring it back.
Mark, can we
Bring it back.
Your question about the map.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, looking at the city and looking at the red lines, are you saying that if a fire would happen, like within a certain boundary, that probably that fire is spread to that section of the city or?
It doesn't dictate where fires will spread. It shows our opportunities to control the fire in various areas. The red lines are actually called pods or potential operational delineations, not a very sexy name, but it's a way of partitioning the landscape so that we can prioritize where the best places are to stop a fire. We're not just gonna throw firefighters out there every single place that there's a fire, because there's a lot of dangerous places where we shouldn't be attacking fires. But this methodology, which is based on a national model that's actually kind of spread out in millions of acres across the country, shows us what safest places to attack fires are. If you can put a fire out and you see it right there and conditions aren't horrible, yeah, we're just gonna put the fire out right where it is. But bigger fires, more the kind that we're concerned about, and we see more commonly on the landscape, we need to attack them in the places where we have the best chance of success.
Are the pods delineated by topography?
In part, yeah, topography plays a pretty big driver in the data behind the pods model.
You know, and with that said, we are not gonna let a fire just burn to a line, right? Us along with our partners, Forest Service, Oregon Department of Forestry. We're going to aggressively fight that fire to make sure that we're safe and the community's safe. So it's not a matter of just letting it burn to that. Those are just opportunities that if it is burning there, we know we'll stand a better chance to suppress it.
Absolutely.
Like, I mean, so like you said, the boundaries were set by mainly topography and maybe the.
Road access is another big factor in it. And then the kind of fuel and forest that is out there plays another big part too. Yeah.
You said the forest resiliency project is over, and was that just covering the 1,100?
No,
acres?
that project actually was set out at 77,600 acres and all on federal land, actually not on city land. We ended up actually expanding that to do 14,000 acres. So all these green areas total 14,000 acres. And what started off as a project just right here in the city's watershed on federal land, not the cities, because we have our own plan and do our own work. But that expanded to where we actually did a lot of fuels reduction work, creating fire breaks on private land with money from various federal agencies using our local capacity, primarily through Loma County Restoration Project, to do that work, double the footprint that we started out thinking we were going to do. So it's a super successful project. We've got a lot of examples and good write-ups in the media about that work, and it's now in a more of a maintenance phase. Work is still happening here and there, primarily in private parcels, but on the federal land, we've got to the end of that project. And when you see a lot of prescribed fire happening in the spring, especially, a lot of that is maintaining the work that we've done under AFR project for the future.
We have a pretty good idea of when the wind is blowing and there's a fire, how the fire will behave on these steep hills and stuff. Do we have a pretty good understanding of the wind pushing?
Yeah. We do that through our research partners. We have several research partnerships. Oregon State University, Boise State University are both two active research groups right now. They both use pretty sophisticated computer programs and their models. The first rule about models is they're all wrong and some are useful. So we're using these models to say, what are all the different scenarios that fire happens under? Wind, humidity, temperature, all that. And so we can start a fire at a different place in the landscape in the models and see what happens under different conditions. So our research partners are able to do that and run, and that basically the pods work behind this is a computer model that's run thousands and thousands and thousands of times, and it boils it down to the most important places on the landscape where we can keep fire compartmentalized if it starts to get away from us. Great. Okay, the last thing I'll cover in 2 quick minutes is the Community Wildfire Protection Plan. That plan led to the AFR project and a lot of the work in our forests and in our watershed back in 2004. But hey, it's 2025. A lot changed in the wildfire world between 2004 and 2024 when we undertook the CWPP being rewritten. And so that, that included all of a lot of the bad fires that we've seen, of course, Paradise, a lot of the fires in California, and our own fire in the backyard right here, the Alameda fire, of course, in 2020. So the CWPP is basically a strategic plan for wildfire, and how are we going to change the fundamental conditions that lead to horrible outcomes like the Alameda fire, such that it won't happen in the future. Our CWPP now is very like 99.999% finalized. We're just waiting for one signature from ODF, which I'm going to get this afternoon. City Council approved it back at the end of August. So it's all but done. And what that plan focuses on, first and foremost, is how do we address our vulnerability as a community, both within the populations in the city, who are the most vulnerable people, why are they vulnerable, what can we do about that, and whether that's evacuation strategies or what we call home hardening and defensible space work that needs to be done so that homes, apartments, businesses don't catch on fire in the first place when we have fires. Because we know there's not a future where we don't have fire. There's going to be fires in our future. And unfortunately, those fires are probably going to be worse than the fires that we've had in our recent past. So how do we retool our community to resist those fires of the future? And that's the role of the CWPP, is laying out that roadmap to get there in the next decade. And then it's up to people like us, the community and the council and staff, to set the priorities, find the funding, and to do the communication piece and make it happen and involve the community in that solution. So in a nutshell, that's the CWPP. I know we're running out of time, so I won't go any further than that, but enjoy your class and your tour around the station. There's a lot of neat stuff in this station and a lot of history here. Sometime you can come back and take a slow walk around the lobby and read all the history of Ashland Fire and Rescue, which is fascinating. Some really cool old pictures. So thank you all for being here.
Thank you.
Yeah, well done.